Call the November 2nd San Carlos Planning Commission meeting to order. If you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Silverman.
Present.
Commissioner Marsters.
Present.
Commissioner Harper-Patterson.
Present.
Vice Chair Bergman.
Present.
And for this evening, Chair Gutierrez is recused, and this is the only item on the agenda, so he is absent this evening.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next item on the agenda is our public comments. Public comment is limited to the items that are not on the agenda. The commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act. However, the commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. Is there anyone here that wants to speak as part of public comment? No? Okay. The next thing on the agenda are the approval of the October 19th, 2015 Planning Commission minutes. Any comments or changes?
Not for me.
Okay.
I move that we approve the minutes of the October 5th, 2015 Planning Commission.
Second.
I'll take the roll call. This is something new we're doing for the commission. Commissioner Silverman.
Yes.
Commissioner Marsters.
Yes.
Commissioner Harper-Patterson.
Abstain.
Vice Chair Bergman.
Yes.
That's fine.
That's it?
Yep.
Okay. All right, the next item on the agenda is the public hearing. And the procedure for a public hearing is that the staff will present a report on the history, physical features, et cetera, on the application, followed with the staff's recommendation. The applicant will make a presentation after that, and thereafter interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out a speaker's form found by the door and hand it to the recording secretary prior to addressing the commission. The speaker should come up to the microphone and speak since the meeting is being recorded. This will assist staff in preparing the minutes. And I have, I think I have a 3 speaker, I have a number of speaker cards here. If there's anyone else that wants to speak, just please fill out a speaker card. So the item on the agenda tonight is 545 Walnut Street, APN 050-072-220. Consideration of a design review and grading and dirt hall approval to allow for new construction of a 4-story mixed-use building above an underground parking garage, continued from the October 19th, 2015 Planning Commission meeting. And does staff have a presentation?
Staff does.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Jill Lewis. The project before you tonight was continued from the meeting on September 21st, 2015, and is a request for design review approval and a grading and dirt hall certificate for a new mixed-use project consisting of an underground parking garage, 1 ground floor commercial space, and 9 residential units at 545 Walnut Street. The subject site is zoned MUD, mixed use downtown, and has a corresponding general plan land use designation of mixed use medium density, both of which allow up to 50 dwelling units per acre. The project site is 1 parcel measuring 7,533 square feet in area, currently developed with 2 units. The neighborhood consists of mostly multifamily residential uses with a few commercial properties at the corners. To refresh your memory, this project requires Planning Commission approval of the following: design review and grading and dirt hall certificate. It is again a new 4-story mixed-use project, below-grade parking, 1 ground floor commercial space, and 9 apartments on floors 1 through 4. It also is for landscaping and associated site improvements. The direction given by the Planning Commission was based on testimony taken from neighbors at 551 Walnut Street and one neighbor at 512 Walnut Street. Residents expressed concerns about sunlight and view elimination, noise, dust, and construction timing, landscaping, and stepping back upper stories. Direction was given by the Planning Commission to, 1, provide a transportation demand management plan. The developer has agreed to provide $40 Clipper cards per month for each residential unit for the first 5 years in an effort to encourage residents to use public transit. The second direction given by the Planning Commission was to provide landscaping at the north and south elevations. The developer has proposed off-site planting on the adjacent properties at 535 and 551 Walnut Street. On the north elevation, the developer has proposed 5 15-gallon Brisbane box trees. On the south elevation, the developer has proposed alternating 24-inch box fern pines and Brisbane box trees. The third item was to return with a plan for construction, staging, and parking. Construction crews will meet at the contractor's place of business and carpool over to the site together. They will park on site as there will be space on the site between the back of sidewalk and where the excavation begins. Once the basement is complete, workers will park in the basement. Condition number 18 requires both planning and building review of the proposed staging plan before building permit issuance. The fourth item was to work with staff on the third and fourth story right side yard setbacks. So the south elevation facing 551 Walnut Street was revised to have a 3-foot setback along the hallway at the central portion of the second and third stories. So this is the second story, and here's the third. And a 6-foot 6-inch to 9-foot 7-inch setback at the fourth story hallway. The hallway at the fourth story is now covered by roof only and is no longer fully enclosed. This is the revised south-facing elevation. Added conditions of approval, number 22 regarding dust control, number 23 regarding noise control, number 24, construction hours were limited to Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Number 25 has to deal with obtaining written permission from the adjacent property owners to plant on their property. And number 26, provision of $40 Clipper cards to each residential unit per month for 5 years. In addition to these added conditions, the Commission could choose to add additional conditions drawing from the letter of agreement between the property owners of 545 Walnut Street and 551 Walnut Street, dated September 9th, 2015. You'll note that there is a letter dated October 28th, 2015, which absolves 545 Walnut LLC from providing, installing, or maintaining landscaping on the 551 Walnut Street property. So these are the formal motions, should you choose to make them. I'm available for any questions you have for staff, and the applicant's team is also here.
Does anyone have questions for staff? No? Does the applicant have anything they want to share?
Commissioners, my name is Toby Levy, and I'm the architect for the project. The developer was going to present, but Jill did such a good job of summarizing his presentation. I think we'll forgo that. So can you give me what? And this is mainly to refresh your members' memory of what the project's about, and we've actually added some more drawings and information. So as you know, it's the yellow site there, and it's located in the mixed-use district, and this is the project site. Oops, thank you. This shows the new trees that have been added on each side of the property, and I'd also like to address the alternate sort of plan for the landscaping and how it differs from the requirement, in that we're actually asking approval for the landscaping to include some hardscape. Given that this is a multi-unit building and that our parking is underground, we'd like to use the courtyard in back and the courtyard in the center as sort of recreation spaces as well. And so It's more like a roof deck where we want it to be flexible, to have using the landscape to separate from the back of the rear unit so the other people can have, the other members have access. We have a barbecue pit. We have some other planting, and we're using the planting in less traditional ways as just on the dirt, but actually in boxes to have a scale as it sort of goes back to the property. As Jill mentioned, these are the setbacks we've included. In order to do that, we actually had to rearrange the stairs in the project, move them back into the units so we could take it all the way up. We also ran the changes by the building department, so they were comfortable when we said on the top floor that we were having an open sort of aisle to further cut back the roof, and you can see where it sets back 9 feet from the property line on the top. I did want to share with you all the shadow studies that we had done, and being to the north of 551, you can see that their shadow is in gray, ours is in beige, and how this is the September shadow. We don't really start shadowing their property until later in the afternoon when their property is already shadowed by their own building. And then when we get to the shadow study in June, it's very similar. You can see that the sun moves around and their building shadows ours, and then towards the end of the day, ours does conclude. And in the winter, we are using 5 o'clock so we can account for Google's time of the time shift, and you can see that by the time we're shadowing their property, it's already dark, but you can see that being on the northern side of the property, the shadows are really, in both cases, they're shadowing us, but more than we'll ever be shadowing them. These are sort of the colored elevations of the changes on both the north and south side. We're using the colors to further augment, breaking down the mass and the scale of the building and the overhang, and showing you roughly the planting that the landscape is suggesting. This is the rendering you saw before, but we've carefully removed the trees from the existing sort of photographs that we had. You can see the top floor to the right of the building we had cut back previously in order not to impede the view from the front unit at 551. And this is the elevation the other way, showing sort of our street tree, the planting next door, and the stepping of our buildings at the property line. So that is sort of the illustration of how we've changed the building and sort of breaking down the mass to fit within the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the applicant?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will open it up to public comment. First one up is Heather, is it Cirque or Sink? I don't care. Vanessa, do you want to go first? Okay.
Okay, hi. So this is a revision to my previous presentation. This is today, November 2nd. And this is a review of our existing building with the front wing and the rear units. 12 units in the back whose only windows face the new project at 551. And a review, this is obviously the old elevation of 545, but we're going to look at new revised images of views from Unit 16 and 32. So this is the previous view that we looked at, which is the study that I did before. And I think to note, in 3 dimensions, it doesn't matter how far away something is because it also matters how wide and how tall it is. So, for example, if something was 100 yards away, but it was a 200-story building that was really wide, it would still block your view. So this building also being 10 feet taller than ours, pushing it back a little bit doesn't help that much. So this is the new image. And it's still 10 feet taller. What I've done is I've adjusted the dark area to match the 40-foot elevation that would be our building if the buildings were equal height. And then obviously the 10-foot height difference and the corridor, open corridor along the top. And I've since also realized that the windows on the corridor inside 545 will need to be lit 24/7. So they will basically shine at us. And this is how it looks from my window. The blue sky has increased a little tiny bit at the top, you'll see, but not much. And this is the best view in our building from Unit 32. This is the prior image of how it would sort of look in a mass. Obviously, I'm not showing the features of 545 because I just don't have that ability. And what I really want to do is just show the general mass. And then this is the now revised view. And again, the dark area is the 40-foot elevation, and then the 10-foot height difference. And what I've also done is there's a pink sort of dashed vertical line there, and that is the line that represents our front wing. So that sort of even darker area at the front is where our front wing is. So what you notice in this image is that the stepping back at the front all happened in line with the front wing. So it doesn't help any of the 12 units in the back. And obviously it's also still 10 feet taller. So there is a slight now recess as the 3-foot pushback, but it's not a lot. And then we have the elevations. I didn't have all the color images that Toby showed, but this is the image currently, or the elevation currently proposed for our side of the building. And what you see is 20 and 30 foot high building trees, but they're proposing to plant them in a 4-foot wide strip, and the root system would go down against the underground parking garage. And in my informal talks with arborists, they don't think that's viable at all. And then the other side, similarly, you have 30, 40-foot trees showing. Again, they're close to the 50-foot high building. I'm not sure they're viable either. And then we have some 20-foot high grass. You know, I don't know of any grass that's 20 foot high. So, and then we didn't really have a front or a kind of a transverse elevation to kind of show the placement of the trees relative to the building, but this is kind of roughly where they would sit. And I've put sort of the brown area of the trees as being where the canopy would not grow. And obviously, if you think about where the trunk is and the root system underneath and where the roots being roughly the same size as a canopy, I don't think the...
So Vanessa, how much more time do you think you need?
Minute or two, okay. Yeah. So this is the end, and the only other thing, I don't have these for you in paper, because I just finished them today at 2:30, so I can get them for you in paper for your packets if you like. And then I believe you did also get my letter where I discussed the jacaranda tree on 535's property and the tupelo tree at the front, which is all going to be blown away. So I just don't see that an honest, sort of workable landscaping plan has really been provided. I don't think these are the drawing. When I look at the drawings, I don't see that that's happened. And then just to wrap up, the relief that we will be getting from the 3-foot pushback is pretty much nothing. So we're still in the same boat. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Michael Farson?
My name's Mike Farson, and I live at 551 Walnut. I'm just going to show you some pictures here, some of which you've seen before, and some are new. There's not very many. This won't take very much time, but I just want to be able to give you a good idea of the views that are going to be lost. And these are all from my apartment, which is the best case scenario because I'm on the top floor. Naturally, units below me will be impacted even more substantially. So here's one. And all of these are taken at eye level as I stand in my living room. And so this is at 35 feet, and the proposed new structure is 15 feet taller. So once that happens, that's the view that I get as I stand at my window. So I don't see that. I now see that. And then there's another picture. Some of the sunsets in San Carlos are gorgeous. So here we go once again. This is right up against my window. This is not stepped back at all. And so that changes from that to that. And then this one here, it's all going to be the same type of situation. This is, once again, I do have one picture here where I've taken it 3.5 feet from my window. So in any event, this is standing right up against the window. This is what I have. That's what I'll be looking at. This one here, same thing, that to this. And then this one, this is one of my favorite. I think this was such a gorgeous view out my window. It was really cool. So that happens. That's what I see now. That's what I'll see afterwards. And then this one here, I took stepping back 3.5 feet from my window. And you can see I did that deliberately, where one of these vertical support columns is shown. And then, naturally, the further back I would step into my living room, further from the glass or the window, the worse the view becomes. And so once again, this is what happens. So I think, sometimes a little show and tell is a little helpful when it comes to demonstrating the real impact that's going to happen here. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Heather?
Hello, my name is Heather Sark. I think I introduced myself briefly at the last meeting related to this project. I am the agent for the owner of 551 Walnut next door, so I manage that property for them. As you know, we are not opposing the development next door. We're trying to take a reasonable approach. I think we recognize that there's a need for rental housing in San Carlos, and that will probably mean development. And so we just want to balance that with the voices and the needs of our tenants and the people in the building that I manage. And I feel like the Planning Commission has been headed very much in the right direction with doing that. So I haven't really felt a need to add any unnecessary noise to what is already a difficult process, obviously. But I want you to know that I'm here. I've been here for all the meetings. We are engaged in this process. We do care about it very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have that will help continue to move toward the right solution.
So can I ask a question? If the developer at 545 plants trees on 551's property, there will need to be whenever landscape is part of a project, that landscape is required to be for the life of the project. And so my question is, if they plant trees on that property, is there a guarantee that those trees will stay there?
Right. I think that's a really good question. I think that's why you'll see the change that we made to the agreement, because it struck me as impractical, realizing that those need to be maintained, that ultimately the owner of that property, since it's on that property at 551 Walnut, would be responsible for that maintenance. It didn't seem practical, honestly, to move forward with it as it was written.
Without something that states from your property or the property at 551 that those trees will remain for the life of the project.
Exactly, and that's a difficult thing to commit to, honestly, with the amount of information we have today, right? Because I am not an arborist, and I don't totally know what will live there well and forever and develop in a way that it actually serves the purpose it's intended to, just because I don't have that expertise, honestly, because I'm not an arborist.
Okay.
I think that I'm looking at the letter of agreement that we have from your, I say your boss.
Yeah,
I don't
pretty
know
much.
what else to call Wayne. Is it Wayne?
Right.
So the first is there's a number of typos in the letter that I just want to make sure are corrected. It refers to the property as 554 Walnut repeatedly rather than 545 Walnut. And then the letter just doesn't, in due respect to whoever drafted it,
Sure.
It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So, I think that what we would like to see, and it's nice that you're here. I don't know whether you have agency for your employer, but I think what Scott is wanting, or certainly if not Scott, I'm wanting, is an agreement. So currently, when you look at the letter, it says 551 Walnut wishes to release. It says 554, but 545 Walnut of an obligation to provide, install, or maintain landscaping on the 551 Walnut property. It then goes on to say 551 Walnut LLC will assume any and all responsibility for any new landscaping on the 551 Walnut property. And I think what we're looking for the letter to say, will assume any and all responsibility for maintaining any new landscaping on 551 Walnut property for the useful life of the landscaping, or something to that effect, so that we have some assurance that, and I'm being slightly hyperbolic, that 545 plants it, gives the responsibility over to 551, and then 2 weeks later 551 says, oops, you know what, I don't like it, I'm tearing it out. And then there's nothing that anybody can do about it. So with that in mind, are you in a position to commit for your employer today to maintain the landscaping for its useful life, recognizing that you're not, if the trees die, the trees die. You're not responsible for taking heroic measures, but basic maintenance for the useful life of the landscaping?
Yeah, I understand the question. Yeah, I am an agent for the owner, so I am empowered to make those decisions. And what I would say is, I don't, I can't make a commitment to maintain them for the life of the plants, because right now, I don't know if or what we would be planting there. I know that my owner wants to retain control of what gets planted there, and whatever it is would be maintained if anything gets planted there. But I don't know what can be planted there, and I have concerns and questions about that.
It sounds like maybe we need to take a little bit of break for you to go and talk to the folks who are standing up over there and figure that out, because I think
It's not just for the life of the trees, it's for the life of the project.
that's not practical, Scott. What do you?
That's
so the
what the
plants
code
die,
says.
and then
That's what the code says, is when you plant landscape, it's for the life of the project.
What happens after the trees die, though?
You have to plant new trees. You are required to plant new trees. That's what our code actually states, is that if a tree dies, you must replace that tree.
You want to show me what you guys can go talk.
I'm happy to discuss it. I suppose what I would say is, for me, it would be very helpful to have someone with expertise in this field to discuss it. I mean, to me, it would be helpful to have an arborist.
Just tell you.
Right.
What's feasible there. That makes sense.
So that's that piece there.
Okay.
Was that all the public comment we had?
It's all the public comment, so I want to...
Maybe the applicant can come up.
It's this over here.
Does the applicant want to come up and say anything to what was just... Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like we had some public comment and some questions raised in public comment, and so I think we're hoping that you can respond to some of the comments and suggestions made by Vanessa in her comments and in the letter,
Okay.
as well as any other comments or questions.
We're perfectly, we have a landscape plan that calls out for the different types of trees in the plan, and we're more than happy to share it. I guess I assumed that it had been shared to the specifics. We did speak to an arborist who said that the trees would grow slower, given the 4 feet sort of dimension, and that the roots would spread accordingly, and that they said it was no different than like street trees that are planted in medians when we were working in Belmont, and there's a big conduit, and we create a median planter strip, and it just spreads accordingly. So what our arborist said is that it would just grow slower, but it would be just fine, and that you would train it so the trunk is sort of stable, even though the branches will obviously be limbed up against the building. As far as Vanessa's comment about the lights being on at times, I think it is an exit corridor. We can keep them dim, but I'm sure that it's your code that tells us to put windows there. I am sure that we would be more than willing to modify those. I mean, we're doing so much to sort of ameliorate the impact of the scale of the building on that property. We'd be more than willing to either eliminate those windows, that we can put those exit corridor lights on a motion sensor, I think, but I know that they have battery backup, and they're for the exiting. So we'd be more than happy to do that. I'm sorry that they're losing their view. We've done a really time to sort of ameliorate the impact, make it more interesting, trying to make it like a serene space. It is also their driveway, so we're certainly cognizant that it's not going to be as nice and as broad as it is, but hopefully it will still be nice to them. And I think, but I can't comment. Our landscape architect is out of town, so, but we did try to cover all those sort of bases with her before she left. And I can't answer about the maintenance, but I'm sure that, we're willing to put it in. And I guess the only, so I don't know what the hesitancy, I mean, I can understand the hesitancy of agreeing to maintain it, but at a certain point, we even offered to maintain it, so we don't have.
Clarify, we no longer require that you put the plants in. That's what I'm saying. It's not about maintaining it.
So, I don't want, can we not have cross-talking out here? So, all right, I heard, but we heard you. Okay, thank you. Did you have something you wanted to say?
We do have a landscape architect plan that delineates every single tree on that property for the new trees that are be planted, on both sides. In terms of the specifics, in terms of their longevity and so forth, yes, that's something that we could certainly discuss about. In terms of what we were planning to do going forward was we have to recognize the fact, too, that their building is 22 feet away from the property boundary. I think that's quite a bit of a distance to try to mitigate what we've been trying to do. But in terms of the plantings, I think those are for folks that know how to handle those kind of issues, which I think you have a plan in front of you regarding that. In terms of the lifelong integrity of the trees, there's no way to be able to tell you how long they're going to live. I would think that, it's important to, if it was really important to the tenants of 551, I would think they would make a suggestion to the owner to plant something on their side of the tree, because knowing that the utility of the property at 545 is not at a 4-story building, as we all know, this is something that they would have to take into consideration when they had moved there. I know of a lot of properties in San Carlos in the downtown district that the distance between where people live is significantly a lot tighter. The impacts of other properties are much more significant in this. So I think we've done a Herculean job to be able to make this work versus not making it work.
Okay, and I'm sorry, did you mention your name when you first came up to?
John Anagnostou.
Okay, thanks. All right, anyone else wants to speak for public comment?
Yes, I'm Wayne Kennedy. I'm the trustee for the property at 551 Walnut Street. We have no plans to plant any trees along the border with 545 for a number of reasons. And we did opt out of our agreement. We had the right to disapprove their plan, and we disapprove it. So there won't be any trees going up there for the foreseeable future. One aspect is that we have a couple of construction projects lined up for our building, and the trees would be endangered by these fairly large projects. So no trees along the border, period. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, Vanessa.
Kind of what I figured,
2
so
minutes.
there are no trees.
That's
2 minutes.
okay.
So when I wrote my letter to you, I pointed out that the 545 project is actually really large. The units inside their building are really large. So from my point of view, they have enough room to shrink and still provide plenty of units. They don't really need to go all the way to our property line. Again, so in terms of ameliorating the impact on us, I just don't see that heroic measures have been taken, because I've outlined at least one alternative for you, and there are alternatives to give us more light and more blue sky. I should mention that I'm in the second floor. The first floor units for residences will have no blue sky. There's nothing about the change that gives them any blue sky. They didn't have it with the previous proposal, they didn't have it, and with this new proposal, they still don't have it. And just to say again, these are our only windows. We don't have windows facing any other direction. This is it. So I hope that we do matter, and I don't think that you matter but is acceptable. It's either you matter or you don't matter. So I hope we matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. Does anyone else want to speak on this matter?
So can I say a few things and then get comments from the architect?
Can we, at this point, it seems like everyone can we close the public hearing?
Sure.
I move to close the public hearing.
As long as I can get the architect to respond to my questions.
I don't know why you couldn't.
Okay.
I move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Commissioner
Yes.
Silverman, Commissioner Marsters,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman.
Yes. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm looking at, I was trying to understand landscaping a little bit better because, it seems like the last couple of projects we have had as little as 5% landscaping. And so I went back to the zoning code, and it says that the minimum amount of landscaping on this site is 15%. Okay. Based on that, you go to the general landscaping standards. And part of that is that landscaped areas may include paved or gravel surfaces, provided they do not cover more than 10% of the area required to be landscaped. So that means 13.5% minimum needs to be landscaped, unless you do an alternative landscape plan. And that's what they're requesting here. But you need to reflect one or more of the evaluation criteria listed below. Innovative use of plant materials and design techniques in response to unique characteristics of the site or the proposed use. I don't really see that, so I'm going to expect you to tell me where one of these things is or more of them. Preservation or incorporation of existing native vegetation. Incorporation of naturalistic design principles such as variations in topography, meandering or curvilinear plantings, and grouping of dominant plant materials, trees, large shrubs, in a manner consistent with existing native vegetation. 4, integration of landscaping and pedestrian facilities in a manner that improves access or incorporates pedestrian-friendly design. This may include reduced ground level planting along the front setback if canopy shade trees along sidewalks are provided. Use of additional shade trees to create a greater canopy effect. Or 6, the greater degree of compatibility with surrounding uses than a standard landscape plan would offer. Now explain to me where in here, because I don't see it. And we're reducing from 15% down to what looks to be less than 5%.
And just to be clear, you're wanting them to say
Why, which of these criteria and how you're using it to meet it.
to justify the alternative landscaping.
Yes, because
plan.
they're
Got it.
going from 15% down to 5%, and, you know, to do that, there needs to be something really compelling to me, and I don't see it with this project.
I understand where you're coming from, and I don't want this to sound like design clip-clop or justification, but I think it's all inherent in the fact that this is a multi-unit building and a mixed-use building in a district that actually requires almost no setbacks. So I think that when you embrace the downtown and the zoning requirements that were made here were made for all of San Carlos, where most of the development is single-family houses, and we're transferring most of the density that's required to accommodate the additional housing to this downtown, that I do think we can sort of think in a broader perspective of what landscape means to the residents of this building to answer these concerns. So really, I don't want this to sound like bull, so I'm giving you the preamble. So I think the innovative use to respond to the unique characteristics of the site or the proposed uses. Well, talking about multi-unit housing on a small urban lot that is working with other buildings where we're trying to accommodate the parking, where we've already requested a variance to set back our building mostly, we are using our open space to be most useful for the residents of the building. So therefore, I'm asking that the unique characteristics of the proposed uses has to do with being a mixed-use project in the downtown plan that is providing the parking requirement on an infill site. We also try to maximize the in-grade planting, at the front of the street, but also we wanted it to embrace the entranceway to both the commercial area. So the commercial area, we flared it. We could have used every inch and have it but we wanted it to be more commodious, so it didn't look like the commercial area was like a second thought to the building. The next criteria I think we did try to use pedestrian-friendly design, which is what I was talking about, where we have the one sort of larger tree on our project, but we also flared the steps, so it would sort of reduce, they're saying to reduce we tried to locate most of our planting. In terms of, we probably didn't do this additional shade tree. We actually have one street tree. And the greater compatibility with the surrounded uses, well, we were hoping that our planting on our adjacent neighbor's property would actually be considered as part of that, a standard green landscape would not be as useful as the box trees, the perimeter trees, the using of the planting for our neighboring design.
No, please, go ahead. But after you're done, I have a question.
So I think we've tried to sort of, embrace everything but the literal sort of translation of the in-ground planting in a project that is really providing, multi-use housing and the commercial space.
Did you consider a rooftop garden, just because it was a suggestion from a neighbor and it has been a trend of
we did, but the trade-off to that is that we would have had to take our elevator higher and our other exit stair higher, and we figured that impact would just be even worse.
Okay.
So we did, we did think about it, and we thought, and then the parapet has to be higher, and it was just like, we're going in the wrong direction.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Discussion?
I'm not convinced. I mean, to me, it feels like the project is trying to maximize the amount of space on the property at the cost of the landscaping. And I understand that I don't see anything that they've done with the landscaping that, to me, makes the case for an alternative landscaping plan.
What would to you?
I could live with a roof garden. I could live with additional trees. By the way, the street tree doesn't really count. That's a street tree. You're planting that, but it doesn't count towards your landscaping. I don't know, but I look at all these projects that we've had come forward so far, and they're level properties, okay, that we know are part of the mixed-use area, and the requirement is 15% landscaping. If there was a slope on the property, then I could understand why, there might need to be less landscaping or something. But I just don't see the case for the alternative landscaping plan in this case.
Okay. Well, I don't have as much of a problem with it as you do, Scott, just because I don't want to elevate form over substance. They were required to have 4 trees. They have 16 trees in their plan. And let me finish. Even if we're taking away 6 of them, they still have twice as many trees as what's required by the code. And they could address your concern by just planting grass rather than having stonework, and they've chosen to provide a space for the residents. So, I'm not willing to basically force them to basically plant grass in order to meet the landscaping plan. So, you're certainly entitled to your opinion. I'm entitled to mine, and I guess we can see how the vote turns out. Unless you have a proposal. If you have a proposal, I'm happy to hear it. I don't have a problem with asking them to do something else that makes sense, but I'm not willing to elevate form over substance. And since we're talking about our positions, I'm prepared to vote on this. I'm gonna vote yes. But with respect to the transportation demand management suggestion, I'm not satisfied with it. They said $40 Clipper cards. I don't like that because I like to see a proposal that actually encourages transit, and I don't think giving someone just a card with $40 on it does it. I'm going to ask that they provide subsidize passes at 50% of the cost of a pass. Looking at that, actually, if folks are, I'm assuming most folks are going to want to take the train. If they take the train and it's one zone, that's actually going to be cheaper for them than what they propose. If they choose two zones, it's a little bit more expensive, and that gets you either to San Jose or San Francisco. I can't imagine people are going to be going much farther than that, and it's probably going to cost them about the same amount. But I'd like to see it rather than 5 years as they propose. I would suggest 7. So I'm going to suggest that if folks are supportive. I'm assuming that the applicant is not going to have any problem with that, and they're shaking their head in a way that they aren't going to have a problem with it. So other than that, I don't have anything to add.
Can I make one clarification in what you said about the 16 trees?
Yep.
None of those 16 trees are on their property. 0.
Okay.
So
Still planting them.
there's no agreement from either property owner on either side that I've seen that will allow them to plant any of those trees.
Through the chair, staff would like to clarify the number of trees, if that's okay.
Sure.
Given that's what you're discussing right now.
They're required to have 4 trees, as you said, and they've provided 16, and they're all on site. They're just in planters.
Are they in boxes?
Yes.
Okay.
So where are we now?
Good question. I mean, I have to say, I would have liked to have seen a rooftop garden, but I don't know that I feel strongly enough about it, given that the applicant made the other adjustments that we asked for, and given how far away 551 is from the property line. So I'm kind of in the middle there, leaning towards approval.
Here's my concern. My concern is that if we approve this as an alternative landscaping design, there's no developer that will actually come forward with 15% on their property because they know they can get away with 5%. And they're all going to use alternative landscaping designs. And so essentially what we've done is we've taken what's our zoning code and we've made it irrelevant, okay? Because our zoning code actually says that we have to have 15%, or we have to have a compelling reason not to do it. Not because we want to build a bigger building, but because there is some overriding reason for us not to have 15% landscaping. And I just don't see it on this one. And I understand that you don't, but you know, when you look at the code says 15% or a compelling reason. And
So David asked if you had a plan
I would
in mind.
I would ask the developer if you have additional places that you feel you could put trees or additional landscaping.
Well, we talked about that last time, and they didn't. I mean, not complying with the current zoning, which allows them to build to the property line. I mean, that's the point that that the developer was making, was that the zoning allows them to build to the property line.
Yeah.
So that's what they've done, and they can, like, that's what I'm saying, form over substance.
Right.
If you really feel strongly, then tell them to plant grass. I mean, that's going to comply with the zoning code. They can plant grass.
Yeah, we don't want to
And
do that.
is that going to, I mean, is that going to somehow improve the development or improve the community in some way? I mean, that's what I'm struggling with. You know, the developer can satisfy requirements in however they choose, within reason.
Right, but that's why I'm struggling with the fact that it calls for 15%. And if we have the ability to say, no, you can't just plant grass, okay? You can recommend that you want grass, but we have that ability, okay, to make those recommendations and to change the plans in order to do that. So what I see is if we give away at this project, okay, then there's no reason that we can hold any other developer accountable, and
Sure
it
we
just
can. Sure we can.
But I
We're not
think
setting
since they're
precedent,
not
but also I'd like to, from staff's perspective, you believe that they've satisfied the requirement for an alternative landscaping plan? Do you want to explain why?
Well, let's start back with the 15%, if I can start there, if that's
Sure.
okay. There is a requirement that 15% of the site needs to be landscaping, and landscaping, of course, consists of things planted in the ground and in the dirt and a certain amount of hardscape. So the site is roughly 7,500 square feet. 15% of that, the requirement would be 1,125 square feet of area devoted to some amount of plants in the soil or some hardscaping. And what the applicant has provided, or what the plans have demonstrated, I think with this letter from your landscape architect, actually shows that they are above the 15% requirement. They have 1,168 square feet of area devoted to an alternative landscape plan. So it's really a question of what the landscaping consists of, like whether that's grass or whether that's hardscape. And what they've done is provided a combination of planting in some raised beds, some hardscape, and you know the details better than I, but I just wanted to start from the 15%, because if the concern was somehow that they were not providing at least the minimum required area, they are. It's just what it basically consists of. And if you would like to add to that, you're welcome
But it
to.
consists of is actually preventable by code.
Through an alternative landscape plan, correct.
So I think the issue is, one, are raised beds acceptable? Or are you talking, because currently with stormwater management, not in this project, but in other projects, we have to raise the beds to retain the water. So is that an acceptable mean to consider landscaping? When you build a bed that's 2 or 3 feet tall, is that the equivalent of building in the ground? Or are you saying point blank, you have to leave 15% of your lot area vacant in order to qualify for that? And the point I was trying to make is that we're trying to, when we consider the alternative is, yes, we could make more of our outdoor space raised beds. We could, if that would make, the commission happier. We can certainly do that instead of boxes of trees. We would certainly be amenable to do that. Could we actually take all of our outdoor space and plant it? We would prefer not to, because we consider, especially for the ground floor and the other people, and we are right up against the parking lot, which has its, these pine trees, these huge pine trees. So we are sort of mitigating it with some color right behind it. So, I'm not the landscape architect, so I'm trying to do my best here, but I'm sure our developers would be more than happy to provide more raised beds. I just would hope you wouldn't ask us to do all the open space in the site in that. That's all.
As in previous planning meetings, what I'm looking for is additional planting, okay? Whether it be vertical planting. For example, you cannot plant on the property next to you.
Right.
Okay? Doesn't sound like it. But I don't, so your building is absolutely right up against the property line. Mm-hmm. Is there an alternative to put vertical landscaping up the side, whether it be vines, whether it be, something along that side of the building to soften the building? Obviously, they're not going to allow trees, but what we've done in the past is we've done vertical landscaping where we essentially create lattice on the outside of the building that allows greenery on the side of the building, okay?
And Commissioner, we can. We're allowing 9.5, almost a little less than about 10 inches for shoring, which is, as you know, just the piles that remain there. We could use that that distance to actually put the vine pockets in.
So these
Yeah.
are the types of things that I'm looking for. When I you know, it doesn't have to be, 15% in the ground. There are multiple ways that we can accomplish this 15%. Roof gardens would be a wonderful way. We don't do roof gardens in San Carlos very often at all. You could put a garden on the top of a roof and accomplish all 15%, and you wouldn't have to have, anything anywhere else on the property. It just seems to me that there are all kinds of ideas here and ways that it can be accomplished. And instead, what developers are doing is they're coming here and they're saying, we can't meet that. And that really bothers me. I'd rather see you meet it in some way, whether it be vertical, whether it be more planter boxes, raised shrubs, use it to screen your patio area. Those are the types of things that I'm looking for, not necessarily to punish you for,
building
not
a
meeting the
multi-unit
15%.
Okay,
But I
now
think
I understand.
that developers need to understand that there is a 15%.
But I think Lisa said that
There for a
they
reason.
met the 15% guidelines.
But the problem is that 15% includes a lot of pavers and hardscape, okay? And according to the landscaping rules here, landscape areas may include paved or graveled surfaces, providing they do not cover more than 10% of the area required to be landscaped. So that means if you've got 15%, only 1.5% can actually be paved to accomplish part of that.
Well, so I guess just to see if we can move forward, if they're willing to put in vertical landscaping, and that's certainly something we've asked of many developers at previous meetings, so I don't see that as being out of the realm of possibility at all, then perhaps we can include that in as a condition.
Yeah, I'm
and move
fine with
forward.
them. I'm fine with that. And I got to be honest with you, I don't mind them using some pavers because we're in the middle of a drought, right? And hardscape is, I think, a legitimate way. I mean, I like green, but I think we need to be prudent too. I mean, we don't want to be using up more water than we have to. So I think you have to look at it that way as well.
Yes, but there are also drought-resistant plants also. The other thing that, so there's a couple of other things. One is, can you tell me the tree that's sitting in the front? Not the street tree. Yeah, it looked very small to me.
Oh, you mean that one?
Yes. And I'm wondering if we can put a much taller tree in the front?
It's a tupelo tree.
No, not the one that you're removing. The new one is the same species as what's been removed. Okay. And then there's no other location on the property, and I'm looking at the back right-hand corner. I'm a stickler for those details, aren't
So
I?
I want to make sure I'm capturing this, right? I mean, what we're saying is that vertical landscaping, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So what Scott just captured, and I just realized in all of our machinations with the building department, the stair that you see that goes down, let's see if I can get to another plan. Can you put ours back on? I'll show you what Scott, I just realized Scott is after. Sorry, Commissioner Marsters is after, okay. Okay. No, can you just do the next one then? Oh, that's the last slide. Okay, now I got it, okay. Sorry. So Commissioner Marsters is after this little square on the lower right-hand corner where we used to have a stair. And it is possible that we were doing that for just miscellaneous building stuff, but I'm sure we can cut out part of it and put dirt there and plant some meaningful planting that would actually help the building next door. Let's see if I can do it. Is
That's
this
the back right, where the
Right.
stairs
Oh,
were?
it doesn't show. It's where the stairs were in the landscape plan, and let's go. Oh, sorry. So you see where that tree is in the lower right hand? We can take that little square lower down, right in that corner. We could actually carve away the garage and get a real tree in there. I mean, we could carve out like a 10 by 10 foot space and put a real tree in there. I don't want to mislead you. I know I need that for, some building stuff. But we could, it's now like 20 by 20, and we could sort of take the rear chunk out of it to put a real tree in the corner there.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you a few more questions here,
Okay.
because I'm going to get down to the details. What about that whole area along the right-hand side there? So what is underneath? Does the parking go all the way to the back of the property?
Yes, it does.
It does. So is there any reason you can't put large box trees along that right-hand side, large planters, okay?
Oh, no, this is already concrete, so we would just be beefing it up. You mean on the deck?
On the deck?
Yes,
So
no.
along that side, I mean, it's in your best interest because otherwise, everybody there you're going to have a 6-foot fence is my guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so you might as well have some nice trees along that right-hand side. And then the other question I have is along the left-hand side. I see, is that a staircase going down? What is
Up in the corner there, that is
on
a
the
stair.
right-hand side? That is a staircase going down?
No.
What is that?
Just, there's a bench at the corner. It was like a meditation corner, so that's...
What about putting another tree in the back?
I mean,
At
we
the-
could put
at
a
the
tree,
top.
on top. We can do that. I think that there's trees all around, all at that rear. That's a whole raised planter at the rear of the site.
Can you make all of that?
That
It's
is all
like a,
that is all
it's like an
trees.
L and then the little piece at the top. If that can all be trees,
Yeah, I
okay?
think it already is trees. On the very right-hand side, that's all trees.
Yeah, but you could probably put one more to
I'm
the
saying-
left at the top,
Right, yeah, we can do that.
okay? Now, are all of these trees new or are these?
They're all new.
They're all new trees.
They're all going to be in a raised planting bed.
Okay. And again, with landscaping, it's for the life of the project.
Right.
Okay.
These are easy to maintain. And quite honestly, we didn't know until just now that we weren't getting the planting on 535. We thought they were just excusing us from our maintenance. We didn't know that.
What about the trees on, 511 or 515? Do you have any agreement with that property owner?
They said they wouldn't mind if we planted them, but that's all we got, I mean, we're benefiting, we're benefiting their property. What happens if they decide to develop? Are they suddenly released from this? I don't know.
And do you have the same 10-inch setback?
Yeah, we do have
on the property line
Yeah.
there? Okay.
You get them all?
Yeah.
Any other discussion?
I would just observe that I'm not going to vote against the project if everybody else wants to put vertical landscaping on the sides, but my view on the vertical landscaping is we've done that, at least when I voted for it, to break up the massing and to improve the appearance of the building to the adjacent neighbors. And frankly, I think the side of this building is beautiful. I don't think that vertical landscaping breaks up the massing or improves the appearance of the side of the building. So, I mean, I'm not in favor of it. I'm not going to oppose the project if the three of you want to add it. I just don't agree with that. As far as adding 2 more trees, I mean, I'm not opposed to that. I like trees, I think, as much as Scott does. But I also am willing to provide some deference to the developer and more importantly, the landscape architect, that they've designed a landscape plan that works for the property. But again, I mean, I'm not going to vote against the project if the other 2 of you agree with Scott that those things improve it.
I'm sort of with you. I mean, I don't need to have them, but I mean, I'm not gonna go against that. I don't have a problem with supporting that.
I think the side of the building is also really nice, but I see vertical landscaping as improving it even more. I still think having something green to look at is better than even a very pretty building right in front of you. So I tend to lean towards vertical landscaping.
And so what if we said 50% of it needs vertical landscaping so that it adds a different texture layer to what's already there? Okay, so it adds one more layer to the existing project. Would you?
I mean, in the reality, right, these renderings show the trees that no longer will exist anyway because they would have been planted on the opposite.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
My position doesn't change. I'd also add that, and this is with respect to Mr. Kennedy, because he has the absolute right to decide what happens on his property. My sense from his comment was he really doesn't want the folks from 545 on his property, and just maintaining those vines is going to require somewhat. Well, I guess they could probably put together an irrigation system that would allow the plantings to be irrigated without going on Mr. Kennedy's property. But I definitely, if you guys are going to go for that, I would highly suggest that you add, if feasible, to whatever you require, because I do question the feasibility of maintaining and frankly installing those vines without the cooperation of Mr. Kennedy.
Fine with if feasible.
I like the feasible, yep.
I like feasibility.
So I think that I think I'm ready to vote, but I wanted to comment to the community regarding the shade. And we listened to all your presentations, and unfortunately, the city does not have an ordinance that protects sunlight. And there's rights of the property owners as well to build to the code. So it's sort of with heavy heart, but I don't see how. I think we'd be in trouble almost legally if we rejected it because of there not being sunlight, because we don't have a code that actually protects sunlight and views. But it's very sad. But I also think that the developers really work to put together a building that is extremely aesthetically pleasing and will bring value to the neighborhood. I think that there's been a lot of care in there, and I think that they've tried to accommodate it by creating the setbacks, even though the setbacks aren't given the kind of relief that the residents need. But I just wanted to. You've been hearing us talk about all the landscaping and not talking about the shade, and I wanted to know that we've all sat and talked and thought about the setbacks and the shade, but there's not a lot that we can do about it because we have to uphold the code. And so I just wanted to mention that. All right. Are we, any more discussion? But the public comment's closed at this point, so I'm sorry.
So those lit windows couldn't go away?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't hear, but can you ask staff?
The lit windows, could they go away?
the lit
So
windows.
I think that the issue is, and I recognize public comment is closed, but I think the concern is that that there are the windows that are lit for security or safety purposes, and what the developer suggested is they put them on a timer. So I think that what we can do to address that issue is provide a condition that any lights that are going to be in the common area that could be placed on a timer consistent with, any applicable city and state safety codes be put on a timer, and that will address the concern to the extent that we can.
I'm all right with that.
Would we want timer or a motion detector?
Motion detector, I think.
I'd say both.
Okay.
So can we have the motion up? So, I think the issue that's outstanding now, and I'm prepared to make the motion or defer to Scott, either way, is it sounded kind of like we were 2-2 on the vertical landscaping, but I'm not going to vociferously argue against it. So it's kind of up to you, Shannon, if you want to go. I think the last proposal was 50%. And, if feasible, and so it's kind of...
I'm okay supporting that.
Okay.
It's not enough for me to say no to the project. I think I'm fine with 50% if feasible.
And then there was the issue of the 2 additional trees that I think Scott wanted on the...
I want 4. I want 1 on the north backside and 3 on the south backside.
Say that one more time.
1 on the north
One on the
backside
north
and-
backside and 3 on the south backside.
Okay, so again, I think it's with you, Shannon, and
I'm okay with that.
I'm good with that as long as it's feasible on the
Yeah.
backside because of
We
the
can add,
construction.
if feasible, to all of this, and then staff can make the decision about whether it's feasible to only put 2 trees there or 3 trees there or what.
okay. And for staff, if I just note 4 additional trees if feasible as discussed at the hearing, is that going to be sufficient for you?
And to clarify, those are in the rear yards, both corners. Okay.
1 in the front, 3 in the rear.
Okay.
You had your 50%.
Yep, I'm on it.
Got it, okay.
TDM,
So,
vertical, 4 trees, and
Lights.
I move that the Planning Commission grant approval of the request for a design review for the mixed-use project at 545 Walnut Street, APN 050-072-220, based on the findings for the reasons incorporated in the staff report, and as conditioned in the code compliance certificate with the following 3 additions. The first, that the developer be required to provide vertical landscaping on both sides of the building. And when I say the both sides, I don't mean the front and the back. I mean the lateral sides. 50%, covering 50% of the sides, which can be done on either 100% on one side or 50% of each side, or some combination thereof, to the extent feasible. In addition, to add 4 additional trees on the rear corners of the property to the extent feasible, and that condition
Lights and clipper cards.
Condition 26 be modified to require, rather than $40 clipper cards, 50% subsidized transit cards to 1 per unit for 7 years. In addition, and lastly, that the lights that face 551 Walnut Street in the common areas be placed on both timers and motion detectors to minimize the disruption to 551 to the extent feasible and consistent with city and state safety codes.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Silverman,
Yes.
Commissioner Marsters,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen,
Yes.
Vice Chair Bergman.
Yes.
I move that the Planning Commission grant approval of the grading and dirt hall certificate to facilitate the creation of the underground parking garage for the structure at 545 Walnut Street, APN 050-072-220, based on the findings and for the reasons incorporated in the staff report and as conditioned in the grading and dirt hall certificate.
Second.
Roll call?
Commissioner Silverman,
Yes.
Commissioner Marsters,
Yes.
Commissioner Harper Pedersen,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Bergman.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. All right, next on the agenda are reports, correspondence, and general information. Do we have any reports on recent city council actions?
None this evening.
Okay. Planning Commission comments or reports?
I would like to see what has become, I will call the 2015 Planning Commission standard conditions just added to every any mixed-use project that we see. And what I'm referring to are the noise conditions, the dust conditions, the construction hour limitation conditions. And, obviously, if staff doesn't want them in a particular case, they can certainly leave them off and note in the staff report that they've left them off. If someone's opposed to them, then that can certainly be reflected in the staff report. But I mean, my view is I'd like to see those in every one since we're just adding them, and I want to be fair.
Certainly, I hear you. So that's noise, dust, and construction hours.
Yep.
The problem with that is that we actually have in our code, construction hours that we have to modify each time. And if we automatically put them in, then that creates a little bit of a problem, doesn't it? Because we're essentially saying that we're doing something irrespective of what the code says.
And you certainly can do that, and the commission has done that on a case-by-case basis. And we can certainly, just check in with our legal counsel, or maybe council's here tonight, they might have an opinion, to see if that's something that you can do in advance of, certainly because it's a common concern that a lot of neighbors have about having some limited times or reduced times, especially where there's a lot going on already. Certainly there can be a case where there's nothing going on and maybe there's not a concern.
So I'm not sure if that's something that we can do in advance. I would stick to the case-by-case basis for now, but I can certainly check with Mr. Rubens.
Can you check on that? I don't have a problem with the other two, but that's actually in our code
Right, I
about the
understand that.
construction hours. That's why I'd like you to look at that before we make that decision.
And I guess for clarification, are we asking for standards to be consolidated so that they can apply in advance to all cases going forward? Is that what we're trying to accomplish here?
No, and I just say that I'm not seeking to change the code. I'm just making an observation that it's something that we have been routinely adding to everyone, and we can case by case take it out. I'm just, it just to save time and to make sure that we don't forget. I don't really care strongly, and we can't vote on it because that would be an issue. I would just start with the other two, and I'm sure we'll remember the construction hours, and that's fine.
Okay, any correspondence?
None other than what was provided on the dais this evening.
Okay, planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects?
Yes, so our next Planning Commission hearing is scheduled for Monday, November the 16th, and on the agenda will include a couple of follow-up items for the Transit Village, one of them being the grading and dirt haul certificate. As you may or may not recall, the grading and dirt haul certificate was not part of design review, so that it is an element that needs to be reviewed and improved by the Planning Commission, so that'll come forward on the 16th. Also, with a signed program for the residential component of the project. I think they're going to be ready to show those, but those are two items that will eventually be coming forward to you, most likely on the 16th. The second item is a signed program for the approved OSH retail location over across from Pamphon Industrial Road. So they put together a signed program for the site, so that will be something the Planning Commission will review as the commission reviews all signed programs. And then the third item is a proposed lot split at 1985 Carmelita. So this is one lot dividing into two. And then the second item that I would like to pull, I sent out an email, but since you're all here this evening, and I did get a response from Commissioner Silberman, is whether the commission will be able to have a meeting on December 21st. So as you know, we have 2 meetings every month, and the second meeting in December it falls on the 21st. If it's something that you can't get back to me on right now, certainly just keep it in mind and please send me information as to whether or not you'll be able to attend so we can schedule accordingly.
Again.
I'm not sure yet. I'm sorry. I'll get back to you as soon as I'm able.
Okay. Is that it? All right. Meeting adjourned.